And I walked away from that little conversation. I thought, oh, it's a choice that I can be a peacemaker. It's a choice that I can actually be a scribe and produce. It can be a choice that I can actually be someone who can be much more positive out there in the world and be a showman around what it is that I get to do.
Welcome to Future Fit Leadership, a podcast for emerging, experienced and executive leaders to build community, grow capability and future focus their career pathways. There has been a global shift in how we lead, and our conversations with leaders and executives explores the skills, strategies and mindsets that is needed to thrive in this ever-evolving landscape of the future. So whether you are a seasoned executive, an aspiring leader, or simply curious about the future of leadership, we are here to give you practical insights to unlock your potential, change the status quo, and break open our assumptions on how work works. Produced in partnership with Future Leadership, a capability ecosystem for boards and executives, Future Fit Leadership is your place for bite-sized learning for executives hungry to make a change. Hello and welcome to Future Fit Leadership. I hope wherever you are listening to this podcast, you are well. There are people who walk into a room and instantly change the temperature. Josh Phegan is one of those people. He doesn't arrive quietly. He arrives with curiosity, with a grin that says, let's get to work, and with a kind of energy that makes you sit up straighter and believe you can do hard things. Josh's story begins in a house where learnings was a love language. Picture a young boy shuffling out at what felt like the middle of the night to find his dad at a desk, studying, always hungry to get better. Picture car rides soundtracked by Ziglar and Tracy on cassette, not top 40 radio. And then there is the drive that changed him. A long stretch of road out of Albury-Wodonga, a Tracy tape called The Science of Self-Confidence, and a teenage Josh who returned home not the same person who left. He learned that confidence can be built, that words can lift, and that timing matters. That insight has powered a lifetime of helping high performers find that extra gear. If you ever have been coached by Josh, you know he is human first and title last. He believes that great coaching happens in the car on the way to a meeting and on the way back. He will ask how you want feedback and then deliver it so you can actually hear it. He is a learn it all, not know it all, and he has a cheeky mantra for setbacks. Of course. Lost a client? Of course. Curveball Tuesday? Of course. It is his way of reminding us that resilience is a muscle and leadership is the art of recovering fast. He's also the master of energy, not the hustle until you drop kind, the Tony Schwartz kind. Manage energy, not time. Great leaders build renewal into the seams of their day and the seasons of their year. They protect the morning with a quiet check-in, they create small windows to breathe between big moments, and they honour longer cycles with time out that refuels the work. Josh lives this. He sets rhythms and keeps his team moving. From the 7 o'clock check-in that aligns the day to the way he carves out real breaks so the ideas keep their edge. He writes to steady his mind. He plans because strategy loves structure, and he reads like a man on a mission. And here is the heartbeat of his work. In a world that will only change faster, change management is not a project plan. It's a leadership muscle. And Josh helps leaders read the past without getting stuck there, lead the present with clear intent, and run towards the horizon with optimism and discipline. He teaches teams to experiment without losing the plot, to course correct fast without drama, and to build cultures that can absorb, shock, and still move forward. Josh is the builder of leaders, a shaper of industries, and a generous truth teller who asks the questions that most people dodge. I've known Josh for a long time, and what I respect most is his consistency. He shows up prepared, he shares what he knows, and he cares about people doing their best work. Enjoy my energetic conversation with the one and only Josh Phegan. Hello, Josh Phegan. Welcome to Future Fit Leadership. How are you today?
I'm doing really well and lovely to be here, Sadhna.
I'm looking forward to talking to you. You and I have known each other for many, many, many years. And I bumped into you at a conference more recently and said, do you know what? I've got to have a chat to you about leadership, my friend, because you're doing some amazing stuff in your business.
You're very, very kind. I won't tell people how long I know you because that's going to date us both. But
Correct.
literally, it's been a while, and there's probably a couple of decades under all of that. So, but yeah, looking forward to the conversation today.
So I want to talk about high performers because you spend your life in your business coaching thousands and thousands of high performers. But I want to
hmm
rewind to your early life. What were
hmm
the role models and experiences that you had that have shaped who you are today?
Oh, this is the easy one because, like, literally, I remember as a young child at 4 or 5 years old, walking out in what I considered the middle of the night, which was probably 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. in the morning, to see my dad studying at a desk. And he was always very, very keen to make sure that he would improve his knowledge and skill set. And literally, he did a lot of study to become a commercial agent and a residential real estate agent. But most importantly, he was just an avid learner. And I think that literally, I was very, very lucky to grow up in a household. It was filled with books. And the interesting conversation is that literally, I'm not sure he'd ever read past chapter one, but he bought the book, which was half the thing that literally that he wanted to improve. And we had grown up probably in an environment where you get dropped at school, but on the way, you wouldn't listen to the radio. You'd be listening to some of the American evangelical speakers of the day, like your Zig Ziglars, your Jim Rowans, that style of conversation. So you'd learn Brian Tracy, like some of those audio cassettes, which now
Mm,
dates me, son, I'm sorry.
it
And the
does.
part of that starts to get you to think that like it was a very different era. So I think that literally as a young child, you were kind of exposed to wanting to learn, never forced to. I just didn't know there was any other option that you could listen to anything else in a car apart
Mm,
from a Zig Ziglar or a Brian Tracy tape
yeah.
on the way to and fro. So it was a
I
great
love that.
experience.
It's
Yeah.
interesting how often our parents and grandparents actually influence who we turn out to be. I was speaking to Holly Ransom a couple of podcasts ago, and
Yes.
she shares the same thing about her grandmother having such an
Yeah.
influence on her and how she turned out to be a leader. And I love that you can share that story. And I know you had all of these tapes in the car, but at what point did you realize that you weren't just interested in sales, but the psychology of human performance?
I think that the big thing we lived in a regional area of Australia. Some might know it. It's quite famous as we record today for all the wrong reasons. But down near Albury Wodonga, down near Port Punker and Bright,
Oh,
and the
no,
interesting
of course.
conversation down there is that I was in a position that one day we had to go and sign up a client, and Dad said to me, "Hey, before you go, take this cassette series with you and listen to it." And from Albury Wodonga, it was about an hour and a half to drive there to go and see the client, about an hour and a half drive. And I genuinely think that the person that left the office that day was not the person that came back. It was actually Brian Tracy's audio cassette series at the time, which was The Science of Self-Confidence. And it was a really interesting thing. I've never been able to find it since, but I just remember that it left an indelible impact on my mind that, confidence is something that can be built. Confidence is something that can be stripped away. Confidence is something that can be done by self, and confidence is something that can be given by others. And so I started to think very differently. Hey, I could actually be in control of doing this. And I started to think, I could actually see that you could have impact on others if you gave them some encouraging words at the right time or even some alignment conversations at the right time. And I think it really helps you to lead as a leader because I often say to people, like, hey, Sadhana, if I saw something that I think that you could change, which would help you earn an extra $1 million on a day less a week, would you want me to tell you? And most people say, yeah, I want you to
Yeah.
tell you. It's okay,
Mm.
great. So how do you want me to give you that advice? When do you want me to give you that feedback? How would you like to receive that? And it's a really interesting question because I don't think that as adults we ever talk about advice, coaching, feedback, and how we'd like to receive those. Do we want to, and we don't even know what the options are. Is that public? Is it private? Is it over a conversation? Is it in a car? And I would always say that the best training that I ever received in the workplace was often in a car on the way to an appointment and in the car on the way back from an appointment. And sometimes it was never do that again. And that was awesome. Do more of that. And so, like, literally, it's always a great thing that literally you were coached in the moment. And I think that that's a really powerful framework that if the people are around you can learn how to provide advice, feedback, and coaching in a way that you will absorb it as opposed to shy away from it, that's really the true marksmanship of a very skilled leader of any age profile and demographic.
Mm. You do need a certain mindset, don't you? Because I think you get to a certain experience, time in the job, and age
Mhm.
where you kind of
Mhm.
go, either you too young to teach me anything, or
Yes.
I know more than you do.
Yeah, and I think that know it all or learn it all is a really important concept. And so if you think about a learn it all foundation, you can learn from anyone. Like literally, I've got some good friends, and their 3-year-old daughter Gigi is amazing, and she gives you a good hug, and there's a whole lot of love and energy that comes around. And you just start thinking very differently that like you can learn at all ages. And I think that someone said to me the other day, if you think that you have learned it all, then you are perfectly educated for a world that no longer exists. And it's a great conversation because the world continues to change, and your ability to be adaptive is a really important skill set.
Mm. What are some of the hardest leadership lessons you've had in your career?
I remember I had a fantastic person that was working with me inside of a business, and one day she turned around to me and she said, I didn't realize that when I got a job with you, I also got a life sentence." I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, I didn't actually want to do this job for the next 25 years of my life." And I was like, "What?" I thought that we were getting along fine. But like one of the things that I'd completely forgotten is that I was so self-absorbed about, the success of what the business was doing more broadly, or where we were going and what we were doing, that literally I also had forgotten the most important conversation around helping people to at least feel the sense of, if not actually very much materialize progression. So that this is an important piece that, not everyone's going to be with you along the journey. And I think that there's an old school saying, people are with you for a reason, a season, or a
Mm.
lifetime. And that's okay. There are some people that teach you invaluable lessons. And what I'd also say too is that there are probably events that have occurred over the course of a career that I look back on now and I say, I wish my process of recovery was faster. So that the setbacks that happened that might have taken you a year or two to get over, then ultimately, could you have been in a position that you could have got over that in a day with the right mentoring, the right coaching, or the right people around you? And I think that that's the biggest thing that I would always say, hey, back yourself in, give it a go, get out there and have a crack. And you know what? You will learn more by losing than you will by winning. And when adversity strikes, and it will, expect it. And we came up with a little saying in our business, which is called, of course. And no matter when adversity happens, you just say, of course. If something goes wrong, of course. You lose a client, of course. A payment doesn't get made, of course. A new tax bill turns up, of course. And all of those things that have happened, in the early stages of starting a business, when you learn about things. Now I'm in a position, hey, don't sweat the small stuff. And many of us have heard that sort of saying over the time. But really understanding that leadership is that skill set to be always adaptive.
I like that. The other one that people are talking about a lot more of now is being human centric. And one of our other speakers most recently said, just be a good human
Oh, yeah,
when you are
yes.
leading teams. In the people that you coach, how do you get that message through to them?
Well, just think about this. Like the best leadership skill I was ever taught was to say that, hey, do what others have done to you that you like, and don't do to others what others have done to you that you didn't like.
Mm.
And I'm going to say, so therefore, we're all leaders. And it's kind of an interesting thing in the workshops. I'll say to people, hey, can I just get you to put up your hand if you're a leader? And often what happens in the workshop is that those that have a title or are very clearly the leader inside of the business will put their hands up. And then I go, okay, great. I think I got the question wrong. Can I now get you to put your hands up if you're a leader in your own life?
Mm.
And it's quite interesting because all these hands, and you can see some shy ones go up. And the whole idea is that literally is really think about a basic framework that I don't need to be in control, but if no one's in control, then I'm in control. So like if I see a crisis situation happening, I fly a lot, so at an airport, and no one's in control, I could tell you that I'll be the first one to be in control if something seriously goes down and you're protecting the safety of the people that are around you
Mm.
outside of title or remit. And I think that that's a really important thing is that not rushing into leadership if someone else is actually in a position that they're doing a really good job. I applaud that and let that happen. But if no one's there, then I definitely want to jump in to go and do that and take some leadership in that position.
You're very energetic. Now, people who listen to podcasts in our industry who've seen you speak will agree with me. But
Mm.
I'm interested to know, how do you maintain that energy? Because that's one of the things that we're seeing at the moment a lot of, particularly post 2020 and the issues that we had with COVID, is that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of leaders are burnt out, and
Mm-hmm.
this constantly on environment and, the
Mm-hmm.
stress and performance expectations does lead to burnout. And so bringing that high energy into the workplace is really, really difficult. How do you manage your energy?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic conversation. I would say that I was very lucky to meet the incredible Sue McCarthy, who was a bit of an oracle and used to run a location called the Kangaroo Island Health Retreat. And I went to Sue when I was 19. I'm not sure why 19-year-olds going to a health retreat, but I did. So it was a unique experience. And I went back 10 times over the course of maybe the next 15 years or so with her. And the interesting thing is that we did some numerology one day. And she said, oh, look, you are ruled by the number 5 and you're influenced by the numbers 2 and 3. And so we went through and had a look at it. And there's a positive and there's a negative to each of those sides. And the positive, for example, of a 5 might be that you're a scribe. So you can create, you can write, you can produce. But the negative to that is that you're boring. So I'm either producing or I'm
Are
literally
you
just the
boring?
most boring person at the party. Yeah, a lot, quite a lot. And then after that, there was another one literally there where she said, okay, great. You can actually be at your worst, you can be a warmonger, or at your best, you can be like a peacemaker. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. There's strong language there, Sue. And then the next conversation was that she said, and also too, you can be a showman or you can be incredibly depressive. And I thought, oh, and I looked at her and I said, is that a choice? And she said, of course it is. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go and lean into that. And I was very lucky because I had some good friends that were based out of Los Angeles, and we had the chance to see a guy by the name of Tony Schwartz. And Schwartz wrote a book called The Powerful Engagement. I saw him speak about maybe 18 or 19 years ago. I got to tell you that literally the profound impact that he had on energy management, where he would say it's energy, not time, that actually needs the managing. And so you go, okay, great. So, we've got 24 hours in a day. Is every hour at the same level of energy? Well, I hope not. Because you do need active time. And he did this study on tennis players where if you watch a really phenomenal tennis player, they will actually throw the racket into their non-dominant hand between the points to give the dominant hand time to renew. And then he would then throw the racket back into the dominant hand, just before they go to play the point. So whether you're watching, Serena Williams or Roger Federer, what you'll notice is that these particular things happen. And I was fascinated by that concept. And so I thought, okay, what would actually happen if I decided that I was going to get energy and renewal of energy as being like a superpower that I could have in my skill set, my leadership skill set? And what happens if I could actually not sell anything more but energy? So okay, great. So I'm actually in the position of really thinking about that. And Schwartz had this, fascinating concept that if you're high in energy and you're positive, you're in that performance zone, like nothing can touch you, almost Teflon. But then literally very much after that, lower level of energy, but still positive, is without a doubt the whole conversation around what you're doing for renewal. Now, I can renew multiple times in a session where I might get people to go and talk to each other, do a couple of deep breaths, high five someone, have a bit of conversation, get perspective, get a glass of water, all those things are there. But you will invariably find yourself in the high level of energy and negative, survival zone, rocking backwards and forwards, or negative and low on energy, which is what we go to call that burnt out zone. So it's not that those things aren't going to happen to you. What the answer to it is to think more broadly that what are the very specific behaviors and actions that if you put into place would allow you to move very deliberately into a particular zone. Now, we're all going to go through very significant challenges in our lives, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but a loved one's going to pass away, and you might have been in the performance zone yesterday and an absolute living legend, and tomorrow, you're very much going through that grief. And so when that happens, what do you do? Now, there's great books on this. Option B, Sheryl Steinberg talks a lot about that. The whole conversation then about saying, well, if I'm looking at energy per se, there's only four sources. So physical energy, diet, exercise, sleep; mental energy, your ability to have a great task list, purposeful work; emotional energy, we all know the relationship that drains us. We all know when there's a relationship that energizes us. And then thinking about music and the power of how it can change our state and our feeling. And then thinking then about values, that if I'm doing something that is against my values, and then that will pull and drain. But if I'm living in congruence with things that I think are important, then that will actually rebound that energy. And so as young love, as you do, and you break up with your first girlfriend or whatever, and there's a ton of like anguish and pain. But what you've got to realize is that literally there's a few values there that weren't necessarily in alignment. And I think that like what you learn over a period of time is that literally, okay, when that happens, why does that happen? Now, there are disciplines to success. There is definitely sacrifices that are going to be required. But I would say that literally what happens if you turned, after listening to this podcast, the concept that you could become a phenomenal manager of your own energy and look at the things that make you come alive and look at the things that literally you find drain you. Now, this is interesting. Simon Sinek did a speech which you'd know, Start With Why. And I'm controversial on that because I think that it is potentially one of the worst speeches that's ever been done because of the coaching I have to do after it. And not that Simon's not a phenomenal speaker, but the basic idea is there's this concept that people think that the why is going to hit them as they're walking through the aisle number 19 at Coles at 9:45 on a Friday night. Oh, my why is going to happen is there's some big burst of energy. And I often say to people, hey, if you want to know what you're into, go to the photo section on your phone, tell me what you take photos of, and that's what excites you. So if it's classic cars or it's your kids or it's baking or it's whatever it is or it's hiking, like you need to lean into that and actually do that more. And so rest and renewal, like, thinking about how you stress and expend. And these are really important conversations. So if I realize that I've got a stressful period of time coming up, the renewal heading into that and the very deliberate renewal after that will absolutely be a really important foundational piece. So I've spent, I think, most of my career in thinking about what am I doing to make sure that my energy stays consistent and energetic, but also that it matches where I need to be and I can lift. And sometimes I don't need to lift to the full level, but just enough to get the crowd and the energy and the people that are around you to come with you. So you need to be careful about bipolar energy or toxic positivity and some of those types of things, but your ability to be able to read the play empathetically and emotionally. And I think that the best people that read the play are often paramedics. Hopefully you don't get to watch a paramedic, but if ever you do watch a paramedic, they turn up at the right time. They're really clear of situational awareness. They're massively clear about helping people. And I found that I was at my best if I'm helping others, but I'm at my worst when I'm thinking about myself. So you're here to serve, so serve here really well. And I think the great Hank Petrusma, you'd know him down in Tassie, he always says that, service is the rent that you have to pay to be here on earth. And so it's a great, foundational concept.
Yeah, I agree with you so much. I think there was a time where I'd get to the end of the week and I was so depleted of energy, and you kind of go, this is crazy. I'm going into my Saturday and Sunday, and my own personal time is being used to re-energize myself. And then I had a grandson a year ago, and that literally,
Wow.
Josh, changed everything for me because
Yeah.
I want to go into my Friday fully energized to give
Yes.
him the energy that
Yes.
he deserves as a 1 year
Yes.
old. And
Wow.
so I've built in all of this rest and renewal and
Mm-hmm.
protection. So when I
Mm-hmm.
get to Friday, I'm probably more energized than I am on a Monday, to be honest with you.
Yes. And that's what I say to people. Say, hey, look, I've never been for a run and come back feeling worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's an old school saying that emotions precede action, yet when you undertake actions, it changes your emotions. And so from that perspective, just get really, really good about making sure that, hey, if there's an emotion turning up. Now, we did some great work with a guy named Dr. Edward Hallowell, and Hallowell wrote the book called Crazy Busy, and we got him to come and do some work with us in Seattle. And he said that literally the problem for most of us is that literally you are someone who's got a Ferrari engine for a brain, but you have bicycle brakes. So he said, your ability to overthink a situation is insane. 500 kilometers an hour down completely the wrong road with no ability to slow oneself up or to actually be able to turn around. He said, what you need in your life is you need better brake specialists. So don't overthink a situation, be in this position. And he would say the best thing for people that are ADD, ADHD, OTT, any of those types of sayings is without a doubt, it's a list of something called PTO, so positive task orientation. So what is a list of very simple, specific routines that if I do, that I know that I can rapidly change how I feel? High five a friend, listen to a piece of music, go for a walk outside, get some sunshine if you're lucky enough to do it. It gets you to think very clearly, wow, I am actually in the opportunity here to be able to shift and change my own mood and the state. Now, absorb what you're in. I'm not saying don't process the emotion, but know what you need to do to process that emotion and set a time on it. So if there's a grieving event, I'm going to grieve on this and really grieve on it until Saturday. But come Saturday, I must move on with the new. And I think that's a really important piece, is that literally else you see people that get stuck very much in the past rather than having a bit of a view to the future and being able to absorb the present.
I want to shift a bit to change. And in
Yes.
particular, there's a lot of change coming our way. There's AI, there's employee expectations, there's different generations in the workplace. From your perspective, what do you think leaders need the most right now to keep people grounded in their organizations?
The best thing, without a doubt, is that you need to be in a position that you've got a change management process. Ari Reinsvig wrote a fascinating book on this called Bottom Line Change. And he would say, people hate change when it happens to them, but they love change when they're a part of it. And I thought you were nearly going to say Facebook was coming, because do you remember there was a whole era of conferences where, there's disruption, and if Facebook was a country, and all this stuff that
Yep.
goes on.
Yep.
And then it was literally, there's a Banking Royal Commission, and then you go there's always stuff. And I think John Combat Zim has a great quote. He says, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. What are the waves today, and how do we surf those? So we have a 5-step process to change inside of organizations that we help them with. And the first thing is that literally, what's really the problem that we're trying to solve? So get me crystal clear about the issue. And then the secondary part is that then what's the positive leadership around what it would look like solved or fixed? And that's really getting people to think about, if you woke up tomorrow morning and it was all solved and fixed, what would you need to see, feel, or experience to know that that had actually happened? And then literally, okay, great. Then who's going to be impacted by the change inside the organization? Then build out the specific action plans with them, and then go and do and begin the change. And when you work through that, it's kind of interesting. We've done some work with Toyota over in Japan, And the interesting things what they had said is that the problem is that most people are fixing symptoms, not the actual root cause of the problem. And they spend far too short a period of time in defining the problem and then putting in quick solutions that never solve the actual issue. And so a good example on that, they said, you have a look at it, everyone wants us to bring out ABS brakes and everyone wants us to bring out the airbag. But he goes, we actually know how to solve like 99% of the car crashes. And we're like, okay, great. So what is that? They said, remove the driver.
Yeah, there you go.
And so when you think about all the things of seatbelts and drink driving and other things that go on, or a P-plater who wants to experiment with 120 k's an hour in a 60 zone, what you learn very, very quickly is that literally the drivers are the one that cause 99% of the issues. So is society ready for that? Probably not. But I love that whole idea about the change management process and getting people into a position of like literally what doesn't change in an ever-changing world. Depth and care, quality of relationship, foundational values, helping people to get through life. Always having to take a problem but say, how do we creatively solve that? And I think that that's a really important conversation, is to get really clear on the core of what actually makes you great as a human being. And what I would say, particularly on technology, and AI happens to be the flavor this week, but the foundational conversation is that literally the promise of what technology will do is far greater than what it does until it catches up in 10 years' time. And so from that point of view, like literally just be careful that you're not buying into a ton of hype before you actually see real world change. And I say to people, hey, AI will be no different than SMS. It's just going to be a tool that you will use for some functions inside of your business and your life. And to be honest, like Netflix has been doing it for ages. And apparently I really like series about Mexican drug lords, like, and Narcos keeps on coming up. But like literally that's actually okay, because I don't mind watching that because it's so far away from my world. But if I needed to change, I think I know some careers I could go to.
Funny you say that. My partner used my Netflix login to watch something, and now I'm getting all his shows that are meaningless to me showing up on my Netflix, which is just, yeah, anyway.
Change the world.
Change the world, exactly.
Yeah. Well, imagine if you had to swap Instagram handles with your partner for a week.
No.
And tell me what would happen.
I'd have surfing videos, endless surfing videos is what I would have.
But I'd love to see how quickly the algorithm changes.
Yeah.
That's the big thing for me. And it's like, it's quite funny because I have people that might send me something. I'm like, it's funny that you're seeing that because I actually watched that 2 days ago, but because we're close friends, it keeps on serving as very similar types of content. Yeah.
And the other thing is, and this is what I keep saying to people, is that, the AI will never take on the human's role because it doesn't have empathy. It doesn't have courage. It doesn't have critical thinking. It doesn't hold itself. It lies. It actually lies.
So did you heard about that though most recently, that they had, maybe they'd shut down like a section of ChatGPT 3 or 4, and there was a whole group of people that had bought these AI boyfriends and girlfriends.
No.
And the next iteration was in a position that it didn't have the empathy module plugged in. And everyone was getting really upset that this AI boyfriend and girlfriend has all of a sudden lost all of its empathy and caring, and that like they wanted shutting down and unsubscribing. And so Sam Altman actually had to bring that module back because he didn't realize how many companions people had. And people go, this is sick. I'm like, don't you remember getting a Tamagotchi when you were at school? It's the same thing.
Same thing.
It's just a different version of that. Nothing's new in this world. It's always just a reinvention.
You work with a lot of leaders who are probably constantly in reaction mode. How do you manage them to become more setting the pace mode?
Sure. I think the whole idea here is, and this is really a question of perspective. How do you shift perspective? So if you have a look at it, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, what's that? 50,000 feet, what do you see? The Earth. 40,000 feet, what do you see? Oceania. 30,000 feet, now you're at Australia. 20,000 feet, now you start to see Victoria. 10,000 feet, now you see Melbourne. 0 feet, now you're actually walking along Burke Street. So what I say to people is, okay, great. Now let's go and change that methodology. 25, 10, maybe 5 a year next week. Can you commit to a 25-year goal? Oh, no, I could never do that. Do you have a home loan? Yeah, well, it turns out you have committed to a 25-year goal. Do you have kids? Yeah. And when do they finish school? Oh, in 10 years' time. Great. So you've committed to a 10-year goal. And then literally, do you have a car lease? Yes, I do. Okay, great. There's a 5-year goal. Okay, great. And are you in a position you've got to do something this year? And I've got to do something to complete my uni or TAFE. Okay, great. And then literally, are you in a position that you've got to try and do something this week? Yeah, and I need to paint the front fence. And so you actually do have this ability to be able to move up and down. What you should do though is get very, very deliberate about the planning cycles of what actually happens in business. So we are in a position in our business, for example, that we do a 2-day team retreat, which is 50,000 foot level type stuff every January. And it's setting the vision for the business of where it's going over the next 18 to 24 months. And it's setting the vision, not telling it, setting the vision of where could we go. And there's a lot of whiteboarding that goes on. But then once we do that, and we actually prefer to have lots and lots and lots of debate. We want a ton of friction in our leadership team whilst we're there at that 2-dayer. because we want to pressure test the ideas. We're actually okay to go to do that. But then once we lock in on the strategy and we define where we're going to go, then we're going to go and really push ahead. So we do that. And then in addition to that, we then have a quarterly planning cycle where we're talking about our 90-day sprints. And then we then actually have a monthly where we're actually talking about execution of the things that sit within the 90-day sprints to make sure that we can get a bit of speed on delivery of those projects. And I come in to say, when I first came across that concept that we were going to take 13 days out of the business, I was massively horrified that I was going to lose all of this revenue. But the business has kept on growing and growing and growing because the strategic setting was a really important conversation. And I would say to most business leaders, I'm like, could you crystallize your business strategy in 3 words or less? What? Okay, great. So a digital delivery drive-through. Macca's got really good at digital order on an iPhone. Now they've got AI companions that actually take your order as you go through drive-through. So the 14-year-old kid's not going to ask you for your order anymore. They wanted to get really good at that whole conversation of delivery because of Uber Eats. And then they had to get really good at drive-through. And what their study indicated is that people wouldn't wait to order, but they'd wait once they'd ordered for the food to turn up. Now, that strategy of digital delivery and drive-through drove $1.1 billion in extra revenue last year. So the crystallization of a strategy, can your people get it in under a couple of key words of some very specific things this year that are going to rapidly change the course of your business and its infrastructure? Now, in our world, ours is different. We're not digital delivery and drive-through. We don't even have a drive-through. So in my business, the strategy is KJT, which is keep Josh talking. So anything that's not me talking, then someone else in the business has got to do. And it's not because I'm fundamentally lazy. I just know that that's the bit of the onion that I need to do the most of, and the guys can do the rest. It gave 100% clarity to people in their job roles. Hey, you're the head of marketing, you're the head of operations, you're the head of content syndication. And what I said to people is that, hey, I'm going to say this to you. I employed you because you are wildly phenomenal. I want you to have a massive run at you. Are wildly incredible around what it is that you do. You know exactly where we're going. Just absolutely do everything you can to do it. Make all the decisions, and we'll come back to base camp. And it's so phenomenal because you see people turn around and they go, but aren't you the boss? I'm like, no, actually, no, not at all. And so this is that whole thing of that you learn more by being put into leadership roles that you are not yet ready for. And the other conversation is that literally treat people as leaders and they become them faster. And I think that's a really important thing about, David Marquette's book, Turn the Ship Around, like the leader concept as opposed to a leader follower. And we very much promise to promote the leader conversation inside of our business. So I want you to be the leader and I want you to take charge at all times and me not to have to be involved.
I'm interested to know, what are the rituals, rhythms, and routines that you have to keep yourself at where you are in your everyday?
So as an example, I go and have a look at it more broadly. I have 10 weeks worth of annual leave a year. I work the other 42 weeks at a very high level of intensity. I'm very clear I live in Sydney, but I travel quite a lot. But ideally, I want to be home every Friday night and then be leaving circa Monday night. That's not always the case, but I try to make sure I've got a home base to come back to. And then in addition to that, when I think about those routines, is that I've got very clearly scheduled time throughout the course of the year. And I think that every 4 to 6 weeks, you need to have something that you're looking forward to. So in our business and our particular industry that we work in, December 10 through until January 10, for example, the 2 weeks over Easter, maybe 2 weeks in June and July, sometimes 3 weeks now if I can get a bit of Europe work over there. And then also in addition to that, then the first week of November over Melbourne Cup week. And I know that it sounds funny, but like you actually go and schedule those times and then you know how the rhythm works. So in our business, we actually have a mood calendar of January through to December. And literally it tells you what happens in January in our business, what happens in a May in our business, and what happens in a November in our business. And it's never a surprise to me because after running it for a long period of time, we've documented what actually happens at different seasons and for different reasons. And so this is a really interesting thing is that I will be able to land the business within $1 of its budgeted revenue. And I can tell you 12 to 18 months out that we will do that because of how systemized it's become over that period of time. So what are the rituals and routines? Well, okay, great. I know that if I go for a run on a Saturday morning, I have a great weekend. If I don't go for a run on Saturday morning, like you were saying, then the energy is tired and depleted. But literally learning how to make sure that you know what to do when you're not 100%. And that's really, when you think about rituals and routine, planning routines are amazing. I have a phenomenal lady in my business in Kylie. She's worked with me for over a decade. I've actually worked with or for her for the last 25 years. And the interesting conversation is that, it's very awesome because we speak every morning at 7 o'clock for 10 minutes. No one gets the 7 o'clock shot. And so this is a really important conversation that, learn what makes you successful and lean into it. But literally, you've got to realize that you need discipline around, what is important to you and what is not. And that changes through different stages of life and different life events. But, get clear, is what I'm doing today helping me to be in a winning environment? Or is today causing me chaos and stress and pain continuously because I don't have something organized? So I'm probably the easiest person to kill because if you're
because you know where you are all the time.
Yeah, I know, same restaurant, same location, same people, and that's like over and over. Because I'm a big believer that when you find something that works, go all in on it, and when you're in a position that like you can do that, you live a very good life.
Do you find you ever get bored?
Oh, no, not at all. The interesting conversation is that actually, when you think about boredom, what that is it's lack of a compelling vision ahead. And so what you must think about is that like what stimulates. And when I found out that literally you could solve any problem in the world by just going to Amazon.com and typing it in the search bar and there'd be a book on it, then all of a sudden, and this is a great mentor at the time, a guy by the name of Peter Knight said to me, the most important thing that you can do is have 4 or 5 books on the go at any one time. And I was horrified. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, if you're not picking up the vibe on one, then don't read it. Go read something else. And so like, sometimes I have to read some pretty heavy industrial relations type conversation. I don't really feel like doing that on Friday night. So I can pick up another book and go and read Ayn Rand on, Fountainhead. And that whole thing is about like learning to be able to move with the mood so you don't get stuck on something, but know what's important.
You recently did a report called Firms of the Future.
Yeah.
Tell me more about it. I haven't read it. I only downloaded it a couple of days ago. I haven't read it completely yet, but maybe give us some of the highlights of that report. Well, firstly, why did you do it?
So the basic idea is that literally I worked out that, and I was very, very lucky. I grew up in newspapers, and with newspapers we learn about production and production skill. And the ability to produce a newspaper every day was a real production skill. Had to be on the plate by 10 o'clock and printed out on the trucks and delivered by 3 a.m. and X, Y, Z. And I thought, okay, great. I've got this ability to be able to write beautiful content that literally I think can move and influence people's decisions. And I thought, okay, great. So that means I have the capability to potentially shape the future of an industry. I'm like, well, this is exciting. And no one's going to give me that permission. You don't get that at TAFE. So I'm like, okay, great. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have a go. So it's a bit of a thing that literally we start writing it about now, actually, for next year. And circa September, it's in the September mood calendar, start thinking about what are the powerful concepts that you think are going to go to move an industry. And often I look at what do people grapple with, what are the common issues and challenges, and what is the future. So I don't write about AI because I think it's going to be useful. I write about AI because I fundamentally think it will be an impactor. In fact, if it's not an impactor, I won't talk about it. And so as an example, I look at big issues, and in the industry that I work in, obviously, succession is a big issue. So I wrote about that. Understanding how to actually dominate in digital in the social age, wrote about that. Being in a position that you think about yourself as a business model and how business models was evolved from an individual to a team to a bigger team. And so that's actually how that comes out. And I thought, you know what, if there's a chance that I can have 1,000 people read that more broadly in the leadership section of our industry, then you would make a big impact. And so it's also a great thing because it forces my mind to really consider what is real and what is not, and what are things that literally are in the dark that should be in the light, and to really push that forward to guide that. And it's been a phenomenal writing process, and that has to be delivered by December 15. And the editors make sure they've got it right on the production, and it's printed for the middle of January, and then it's out into letterboxes and downloadables from February 1. And it's a great discipline to think about it. And the side project of that was writing something we've got to call Thought Provoker. And when something really annoys me, I go and write a thought provoker on it, but I frame it in a really positive frame. And we try to do that every month. And it's a short form essay of about 2,000 words. But writing, I actually find, is my cheapest form of therapy. So
I was just going to say, it sounds like it's pretty cathartic for you. It's where you kind of zen out.
Oh yeah, it's the best place. And I think that literally, my mum always said to me, the most beautiful thing that you can ever have in life is a beautiful mind. And so one that has been developed, one that has been tested, one that can think quickly, one that can respond. And so literally, I'm very, very lucky that I heard that advice, and I've taken that advice on, and hopefully she'll be happy with me once I write another one. So.
If people are interested in that report, you can find it on your Instagram page,
Hmm.
downloadable through your links. So that's where I found it. If you had
Hmm.
advice for leaders who are trying to balance ambition with humanity, we talked earlier
Hmm.
about just be a good
Mm.
human.
Hmm.
What would it be in your mind or in your eye?
Three key words. It was actually an Instagram post this week of past, present, future. So,
Mm,
as a concept today, how much time is your mind spent in the past? How much is your mind spent in the present? And how much is your time spent in the future? Now, the past is really valuable because there's invaluable lessons, but it's also to
mm,
the position of gratitude. Present is amazing because in the present, you can really absorb an experience. But if you stay in the present all the time, you actually have a lack of planning. And if you're in a position that you think about the future, it can be very exciting and it can help to pull you to where you're going. However, if you're in the future all the time, you will be riddled with anxiety. So the
mm,
skill set really, when you're thinking about it from a leader's perspective, is that how do I make sure that I can look to the past for inspiration? I can be in the present to make sure that we're making the most of the opportunities that are ahead of us. But how can I literally have the appropriate thinking time to push a little bit into the future to ensure that what we're doing is not redundant? And I think that this is a really important conversation that if you just start to think about that, and I try to say, hey, I probably spend a lot of my time in the future. Now I spend a little bit more time in the present, and occasionally I'll drift into the past, from that gratitude perspective if I need it. So just
mm,
depending on where we're at in terms of the waves that have been hitting me that week.
mm. But in leadership, you kind of need to spend time in all three. If you were giving advice to leader, working on the business versus,
Mm.
in the
Hmm.
business,
Hmm.
what percentage of time should you be sitting, looking, or thinking about the future?
I would say that literally the alternate view of that is that when do you plan to be in that zone? So like when I'm saying that 2-dayer in January, for example, for us, that's very much future. But you
Mm,
know what? But don't try and have a conversation with the future with me in the middle of February because
mm,
that's game time. So I'm not necessarily thinking on it on a day-to-day basis. I'm much more thinking about it in structured thinking times. And if there's good ideas and you're having a bit of a run on a Friday night as you're going for a drive or whatever, note some of those ideas down but then put it into the box of when you're back into that
mm,
zone. So
mm,
I just think that like literally if you're doing it, it'd be a little bit too much on the run for me. I much prefer to plan, hey, tell me where 5 years down the track is or what we're doing next week and actually have that and move to those horizons. And that's a great thing is that maybe when you do a bit of a weekly review, how this week goes or anything there with some strategy, and then reset that for Monday. And like I'm a big one for reset it, like, do that review Friday. So come Monday, you've got new energy for it and you've had the
mm,
weekend to think about it.
mm. So now we've come to the spot in the podcast, which I call the spotlight shuffle. There, if you
Oh,
were
yeah,
sitting in front of
nice.
me, I would give you a bag of numbers and you'd pick a number. But we're doing it digitally. I find it always hard to
Okay.
pronounce that word. So you've got
Hmm.
numbers between 1 and 20. You can pick
Hmm.
any number and I'll ask you the question against it.
17.
17 is what's one decision you're proud of, even if it wasn't popular?
I reckon look, one decision that I'm proud of is that literally I made the decision to have a go. And I know
Mm,
that sounds really funny because I had fought it for many years that I'd never work with dad when I was a little kid.
mm,
But then all of a sudden, working with dad turns out that was one of the most amazing experiences that you could ever have. And I look very fondly back on those years now. And the interesting conversation is that without a doubt, I think that I came from a regional environment and we were starving for opportunity when you
mm,
didn't have huge amounts of population. And that's the problem is that a lot of people regionally can be very fixed as opposed to growth mindset, can be very much a very conservative as opposed to being on the edge, of pushing the edges. And I think that literally, and it was quite funny because I went to a doctor when I was about 18 or 19 and I said to the doctor, I said, oh, I've clearly got depression, and he said, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. He goes, mate, you actually don't. I said, what's that? He goes, I've watched you for years. He goes, you don't have depression at all. So what's that? He goes, you're just living in the wrong place. He goes, like, literally, you've got a
mm.
mind that needs to be in the city. You need more
Wow.
opportunity around you and you need to be more stimulated. And I thought, oh, okay, great. And I said, how did you pick that up? He said, tell me what you do during the course of the week. I said, I'm doing full-time uni as an accountant. I'm working full-time at the newspaper. I've got a DJ gig on Friday nights. I run nightclubs on Saturdays and I've got my own go-kart racing team on Sundays. He's like, have you worked it out yet? He goes, you just like being busy.
Mhm.
And that's when you're at your best. And so we just need an environment that's going to nurture the speed at which your brain thinks. And I was like, geez, that's pretty good. But like, yeah, and that's the reverse of that question. When you first met me, because you were one of my first ever trainers, it came to on in the real estate industry.
Mm.
Was there anything unique that you had spotted then? Because I didn't know.
Your
anything.
energy. It was definitely your energy. You know, when you walked into the room, you knew that you were there. It was your energy. You asked a lot of questions. You were the guy in the room that needed to know the whats and the whys and the hows. You know, you needed more answers than probably most other people in the room did.
The interesting conversation on that though is that I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, see, isn't that interesting? So that's a self-awareness piece, isn't it? But he was so young though.
But and so you know what? Nick Dowling, who's the chairman of a really significant
Mm,
organisation down in Melbourne, he said to me once. He goes, "Josh, I'm going to take you for a lunch." And so we went and had a very simple lunch. He goes, "I'm going to say something to you." I'm going to go, "Yeah." He goes, "This is actually what makes you successful." And I was like, "Oh." I said, "So I should take notes on this." He goes, "Yeah." He said, "You ask people questions that other people won't ask."
mm,
And I was just like, "Oh, is that a thing?" And he goes, "Yeah, you should do more of that." And so what I'd say is that that left an indelible mark. And I would say that if you are a leader, the best thing that you can do is to tell others what actually makes them great,
mm.
because they might not yet be aware that they are sitting on an incredible superpower that if it was made obvious that they could lean into and do more of.
Mm. I think also, I'm digging back into my memory here, I saw immediately you were very ambitious. And I think, but I
Kind.
also,
Yeah.
but I think today, even today, like I think a lot of people are put off by young, ambitious people. And we
Hmm.
hear the rhetoric about, oh, the Gen Zs and the millennials
Hmm.
and the Generation Alpha coming through. And it's the
Mm.
same thing, they want my job and they haven't had the experience. Well,
Mm.
let's work with that. But I think
Hmm.
a lot of people, when they see young men and women who are ambitious, actually get put off by them as opposed to nurturing them in an environment that'll help them grow and
Hmm.
and actually achieve some of the ambitions that they've got
Yeah, the interesting thing is that whether or not it was ambition or just like I just wanted to have a go.
to learn. Yeah.
So I didn't know
Well, that's
where I was going.
ambition.
It was
That's ambition.
unguided. It was completely unguided, but just
Yeah.
yeah, have a go. And
Yeah.
then you were like, and this is a trust account. I was like, what is
Yeah.
that?
What is that? What do I do with this? All right. The next
Yes.
number.
13.
Number 13. Here we go. What's
Mm.
one book, film, or podcast that shaped how you think about leadership?
That's really easy. Tom Peters, like
Mm.
he's the Excellence Dividend. Tom has been probably one of the greatest mentors in my career that I've never met. But like I would say that literally he was absolutely phenomenal, like excellence in every moment. So excellence in the next email, excellence in the next conversation, excellence in everything that you do. And like when I see excellence, I applaud it. I love watching it, in a cafe, in a restaurant, when people do things, a bus driver that opens the door like a couple of minutes earlier, like whatever it is, like that's the most important part. But Tom's a phenomenal author. And if you haven't
Mm.
had the chance to read it, the second one, if I'm allowed a second, would be Ayn Rand. And I think, in particular, Atlas Shrugged. It was a very long book, but that was an exceptional piece that, it really got me to understand that you can actually be a producer
Mm.
and you can go to produce if you choose to.
How many books have you read, Josh?
Well, I can tell you that on my Amazon account, I'm up to about 760
Oh my
purchases.
goodness. Okay.
I haven't
Okay.
read them
I'm
all,
impressed. Right.
but I bought a
But you
lot.
bought them.
Yeah, and the basic idea is that literally, if I find that the best books are the ones that speak to you in the moment for what you need.
Mm.
And so like literally, and so I buy something and I'll read it, and if it's going well, I'll get into it. Some of the foundational ones you just can't beat. And
Mm.
some of the newer stuff, you're like, geez, I wish they'd go back to what some of the older stuff did because they really had potency about them. Yeah.
Mm. All right. Next number.
Oh geez, go with 7.
Number 7. What's the hardest part of leadership no one talks about enough?
I think and I actually wrote a book on it. It was called Lonely in Business.
Lonely at the top. I
Yeah,
mean, your
well,
book
yeah,
was about, but everyone talks about how lonely leadership is, right?
but the interesting conversation, like, and as a founder, like you never get anyone in your staff go, hey, thanks so much for putting the wages in this week.
You're doing a
Like,
great job. Thank you.
and I know that sounds funny, and that does, but I don't think that praise needs to go back the other way. And
Yeah.
I was just think a little bit about that because, like, I once was thinking about it comedically that, how many times you get a staff member, oh, did you do that thing? Nah, sorry, I forgot. And then
Mm.
I was thinking, next week I'm just not going to put their wages in the bank account. And when they ring up and they go, where are my wages? Oh, sorry, I
I
forgot.
forgot.
But the interesting conversation is I think it can be very, very lonely in business and very isolating that you can be in an organization of 200, 500 people and still be very lonely.
Mm.
And just as you can be in a small business, if you're in a position that you don't have people that want to have a conversation about, so what are we doing and where does that go? Or occasionally pull you up too, because like, you can believe your own source way too much. And so it's
Mm.
nice for people to go, hey, maybe shift that. And I've had that a few times, where people would
Mm.
say something and I go, oh yeah, right, okay. And that's a really nice little conversation when you get feedback that encourages you to push and to be better.
Last number.
Okay, let's go with 2.
Number 2. All right. What's one future shift you think leaders aren't prepared for but should be?
One future shift that a leader isn't prepared for, I would say without a doubt, their ability to engage people in being financially successful.
Tell me more about that. How could
I
they do
think
that?
there's a complete lack of financial education. I think it's a shame on society that no one teaches people about money. They
Yeah.
don't teach people how to save it. They don't teach people what to do with it. I think that literally, things like social has really made instant gratification. I think Tim Ferriss wrote a chapter in his book about it, about the new rich, where you look rich but you're not actually rich. And also too, the disease that comes with that is that even when people are wildly successful, they can also develop the disease of the bigger boats, where no matter how big their boat is, they're unhappy because someone else has got a bigger boat. And that's where perspective is that when you look back, you see how far you've come. And I think, Dan Sullivan's got a great diagram on that where he says, here's you and you're running towards the horizon. And as you're running towards the horizon, you want to get there and you want to touch the sun, but you keep on running towards the horizon. It doesn't matter how fast you run, you're still just as far away from the setting sun. But it's not until you stop and then you look back to where you've come from that you realize how far you've come. And the distance between where you are now and the sun is filled with anxiety, but that's actually okay because it's a good anxiety that can drive the momentum inside of your life and your business. And so I think, doing some of those things is a bit of an interesting space, is to learn how to, really get perspective.
Josh, thank you so much for joining us on Future Fit Leadership. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and congratulations on all that you've been achieving and the amazing things that you're doing in your business.
Well, Sadhna, thanks so much. You and I have spent many different times together in lots of different places, from Fiji to Melbourne to Sydney, and in between, and the Gold Coast. And I think that that's the whole idea is that the ability to, and I would say this, to let people grow and let people grow up, let people learn. And it's been phenomenal to watch your incredible career. So thanks for the opportunity to spend some time with you today.
Thank you. Good to chat.
If you like what you've heard, please share, rate and review this podcast. And don't forget to share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. The producer of Future Fit Leadership is Maritza Barone from Guide Your Light Network. If you would like to reach out to me, please DM me on any of my social media platforms. I'm available for speaking at conferences or consulting to your business. Future Fit is created in partnership with Future Leadership, a capability ecosystem for boards and executives. If you'd like to join the community and receive a free takeaway each week, sign up to the Future Exchange app in my show notes. Thank you for having me in your space.